Hi, welcome to Lesson 3-1, Multiplication Properties. In this lesson, we'll learn to identify and apply the multiplication properties. Our learning goals for this lesson will be to identify and apply the identity property of multiplication, the zero property of multiplication, the commutative property of multiplication, and the associative property of multiplication. Don't worry, they're not nearly as hard as they sound, and you'll probably be familiar with them once you see some examples. We will also learn that when we have parentheses around a set of numbers, it tells us to perform that operation first in the problem. Please pause if you need a moment to write down your learning goals. Press play when you're ready to continue. Vocabulary for the properties of multiplication. Now, since this is the first lesson in a new topic, we usually have more vocabulary terms in that lesson. Our first vocabulary term is the word product. This is the answer to a multiplication problem. Factors, the numbers you multiply together to get a product. Identity property. When you multiply any number by 1, the product is that number. For example, 7 times 1 equals 7. That wasn't too hard, right? You know that anytime you multiply a number times 1, you get that original number. And the title for that is just the identity property. Take a moment to pause to write down these vocabulary. Please press play when you're ready to start again. Zero property. When you multiply a number by 0, the product is 0. For example, 7 times 0 equals 0. That's the zero property. Associative property. You can change the groupings of factors and the product will stay the same. For example, we have 2 times 4 in parentheses times 5 is equal to 2 times 4 times 5 in parentheses. This is an example of the associative property. Sometimes we nickname it the grouping property. You'll notice that all of the numbers are in the same order on both sides of the equal sign. 2 times 4 times 5 is equal to 2 times 4 times 5. It's just the order in which we work the problem is a little different. When we look at this problem, 2 times 4 is 8 times 5 is 40. On the other side of the equal sign, if we do 4 times 5 first, that gives us 20 times 2, which is also 40. That is an example of the associative property or the grouping property. Commutative property. You can change the order of factors and the product will stay the same. You know that 7 times 3 is equal to 3 times 7. You probably learned this when you first learned your multiplication facts. And this is an example of the commutative property of multiplication. So let's look at an example of how multiplication properties can help us make multiplication easier. And many times we use more than one property to solve a problem. You may have been doing this if you've ever used the break apart strategy to solve a large multiplication problem. You're probably using the commutative property and the associative property to do that. So in our original expression, we have 2 times 62 in parentheses times 50. Now I could use the commutative property to change the order of the numbers to help it make it easier for me to solve. So I can move the 2 and 62 and change places. It would now be 62 times 2 in parentheses times 50. Then I could change where the parentheses are located using the associative property. I could group 2 times 50 together, which I know in my head is 100. And then I could multiply the 100 times 62 to get a final answer or product of 6,200. So I want to show you a couple of quick little hints. In order to multiply 62 times 100 together, sometimes whenever we have numbers that end in zeros, if we line them up the traditional standard algorithm to do multiplication, sometimes we can get a little confused and not know what to do with all of those zeros. So I'd like to share with you a couple of techniques for multiplying numbers like this that end in 0. If we take the 62, let's go back. we take the 62 and then we put the 100, the 1 under the 2, and we push our zeros off to the side. I like to just bring my zeros down, and then I multiply. 2 times 1 is 2, 6 times 1 is 6, and I get 6,200. Also, you can think of it and use a similar strategy. 62 times 100. Underline all of the digits that have value. So the 62 has value, the 1 has value, the zeros have no value. You multiply 62 times 1, and then just bring your 2 zeros over. So very similar strategy, just lined up a little different. So I just wanted to share that with you so that you can multiply mentally numbers that end in 0. Practice problems. Identify the properties. Write the multiplication property used in each equation. So take a look at equation number 1. Is this an example of the 0 property, the identity property, the associative property, or the commutative property? Take a look back in your notes before you answer. Press pause, write your answer down, and then press play when you're ready to check. Did you write down the associative property? If you did, you're correct. As you can see, the numbers and the multiplication signs all stayed in the same order. We just changed how they were grouped by changing where the parentheses were located. Take a look at problem 2. 1 times 54 is equal to 54 times 1. Is this an example of the 0 property, the identity property, the associative property, or commutative property? Please pause, write your answer, and press play when you're ready to check. Did you write the identity property? If you did, congratulations, that is correct. Let's take a look at problem number 3. 3 times 41 times 7 is equal to 41 times 7 times 3. Please write your answer and then check. Did you write the commutative property? If you did, that is correct. We just changed the order of the factors in that equation. Let's take a look at number 4. 659 times 0. Is this an example of the identity property, the 0 property, the commutative property, or the associative property of multiplication? If you wrote the 0 property, give yourself a pat on the back. Good job. Okay, now more practice problems. Use the properties to fill in the missing number. 678 times 98 times what will give us 0? Write that down on your paper. Press pause if you need to. Press play when you're ready to check your answer. If you wrote 0, you were correct. This is an example of the 0 property of multiplication. Number 6, 4 times 76 times 5, in parentheses, is equal to, parentheses, 4 times 76 times what? Take a moment, write down your answer, press play when you're ready to check. Did you write 5? If you did, that is correct. And that is an example of the associative property of multiplication. Number 7, 6,342 times what equals 6,342? Write it down and maybe challenge yourself to see if you can also write the property. Did you write 1? If you did, that's correct. And if you challenged yourself, the correct property was the identity property of multiplication. Here is our challenge problem. One group of adults goes to a movie, and there are 4 people in that group. They each pay $6 for the movie. One group of children also go to a movie, and there are 6 children in the group. They each pay $4 for a movie. Does the price of the group of adults pay for movie tickets equal the price the group of children pays for movie tickets? So the amount the adults spent in that group, is that equal to the amount the group of children spent for movie tickets? please explain your answer. Describe the multiplication properties you use to get your answer. And if you can get your answer without the multiplication properties, please try to go back and think of a way that you could use the multiplication properties to help you make this even an easier problem to do in your head. Please explain your work, show all your work, and be ready to talk about this in class tomorrow. Good luck, and check your work tomorrow in class to see how you did. So let's wrap it all up. Review your learning goals. Have you mastered all of them? Do you need to go back and review or practice again? In your journal, write down if you feel that you're at a 1, a 2, or a 3 on this lesson. In your journal, please write down 1 or more questions that you still might have from this lesson. Congratulations on completing lesson 3-1. Thank you for working so hard, and we'll see you at school tomorrow.